I'd like to call this special session on January 6th to order. Madam Secretary, will you record that all 7 board members are present and we have a forum? At this time, I'm going to call on Mr. Ronald Johnston to do the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Ms. Teresa Grant.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sure, I'll be delighted to take it over. The purpose of the meeting is for consideration of a contract or a possible service use with the North Carolina School Board Association in your superintendent search. So I'll ask, is she back there? I can't see her. Okay, come on up.
Hi, board members. How are you today? I hope you all had a great holiday season. I'm here. I was here before Christmas, and I talked to you about our superintendent search service. Just to recap a little bit, the process takes about 6 months to do, so we're here to help you if you want us to help you. And I'm not sure what all you want me to repeat or say. The normal process is to start a search, advertise for about 8 weeks, and then interview candidates and narrow it down to finalists, do a thorough background check, and then interview again and make a decision. I've been doing this work on behalf of school districts in North Carolina for over 20 years now and done about 170 plus searches for districts. I'm happy to answer any questions about the search process or I'll be glad to take direction about what else, other information you might need before you make a decision. So you might have questions from the last time. I will say it's important to have, if you're going to do a search, to have someone outside the school system keep the process confidential and be able to make sure that all board members receive all the information at the time and interact with the candidates so that you don't have board members kind of interacting with certain candidates and all that stuff. You all want to feel like the process is fair and impartial, and we're very, very careful to do that. We are your association. I've done this a lot. I think I provided you with some background information and references of districts all around the area that we have done recently. We've worked with most of the school districts in the state. So I'll be glad to take some direction about what you...
Yes, before we do that, let me just, I've spoken to all the board members individually about this situation. And also, the idea of tabling it back in December, the communities wanted to, think about a search committee of some sort. However, after doing a lot more legwork in that, 2 things come to mind: legal implications as well as confidentiality issues with the candidates. And, as much as we want to provide, and be transparent with our communities, who we want in this search, it's unfortunate we just can't do that without being. They're not held to the same confidentiality items as we are under this search. And I've spoken to Allison about this, but I do want to come up with some kind of community surveys that we can provide information from the communities so that we know that they are a part of this as well. And if correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Allison, that you all would compile all this information, provide that to all the board members with the exception, and then we could that would be sent out to the public with the exception of some of the comments that are given to us.
Correct. So part of our service includes surveys that are online. The other things we would recommend that you do a lot, because you can't divulge candidates' names and include the community in your decision-making about specific candidates, you certainly do want to solicit information from the community, both through surveys. You can also have public forums if you want to do that. Another thing that we encourage is the solicitation of organizational statements, so your PTA, your Association of Principals, your, county commissioners, if they want to submit a statement, your Chamber of Commerce. Those are the groups that often submit statements about what they're looking for in a superintendent. And that's all really important information. So we generally recommend you delay coming up with a profile about what you want as a board until you get all that information, and your decision about what you're looking for can be informed by that information. So while you're advertising, you can be collecting this information, and before you get the applications, you would consider all of the community input before you look at the first application. So that's part of the process that we recommend, given the way the laws are and the obligations of the board, and that the law says the board is the sole decision maker with regard to who is the superintendent. So happy to answer any other questions about that.
Anybody have any questions for Allison or any information in the notebook that she gave us back in December as far as their search and what it pertains to? They gave us some references in here and things of that nature. I've talked to Allison extensively on a couple of different occasions. And another thing is, talking about confidentiality, these superintendents that may put their name in the hat, they currently are employed, and we have to be very careful about their information not leaking to the public from a situation of them being terminated from their present county that they're representing. I take this very serious, and this is a board that we can leave a legacy on with the next superintendent of who we bring to the table and how they can assist us in Johnston County with moving us forward. And I know each and every one of you all do as well. So, I wanted Allison to come back tonight just for us to have more dialogue with them, but also let the public know we're not taking this lightly. We want them as involved as possible, with the exception of when it crosses the confidential side. So anybody have any questions or comments?
Confidentiality would, let's get into the weeds a minute, would perhaps involve interviewing off-site. We would not bring people
Yes, ma'am.
here.
No, we never recommend you interview at the central office. We try to find a confidential site. We're very accustomed to that. We have to preserve confidentiality even in who's coming in and out. You do have to notice where the meeting is under the open meetings law. You have to notice where the meeting is. So we often recommend you have it at a hotel or somewhere where there's traffic, so that it's not obvious who the candidates are. Again, hopefully the press will be understanding of that, because we have had people lose their jobs when they've been discovered to be applying elsewhere. I mean, some boards really don't react well to that, so we have to be really careful and respectful of that. But again, I think the most important thing is to make sure you get the community input you need, and let that will guide you in your decision making, even though those people are not sitting at the interview table. Their thoughts and ideas will be with you in the room. So.
I said one question, but I actually have another one.
Okay.
In the past, when I've interviewed out of state for a job, I had to pay my expenses unless I was hired. Then they reimbursed me. Is that how we have this?
Some boards have chosen to, if they bring people in from out of state, to reimburse the candidates for both interviews. In the past, with the tightening of economic times, many boards are choosing to pay expenses for the finalists to come back in, but not the people who have applied and are coming in for their first interview. That's a decision, and you may want to look and see who you have that you're interviewing before you make that decision. So, if it's people that are relatively local, that may not be an issue. If it's people that are coming from afar, but you really want to talk to them, that's a decision you need to make. But we usually ask that question at the time after you've decided who you're interested in interviewing, so that you can decide whether you want to offer them.
Any such thing as an electronic interview where we do?
Yes, we have done those. They're not as satisfactory, and a lot of candidates, even if the board, we've had candidates where the board says we can't pay you way to come in for the first interview, but we'll be glad to interview you electronically. My experience is that most candidates will get in their car or get on a plane at their own expense and come because they know that it's probably a much better interview if they're there in person. So that would be the choice that they could make, but you can certainly offer that. I think, that's one way to deal with it, so. Any other questions?
I know that this may not be a question for you, but anyone who could answer, was the School Board Association consulted during the last 3 superintendent selections? And I know that you've done it for a while, but I know you can't remember specific to Johnston County, but that may be a question maybe some of my colleagues could answer.
You have hired from within, I think, at least the last 2, and we were not involved in those.
Thank you. And-
Dr. Kroom and, I'm sorry, I was just going to answer. Dr. Kroom and Dr. Renfro both were hired from within.
You did handle when Dr. Parker was hired, I believe.
Did I do that one?
I think so.
Possibly, yeah. But I will, well, let me just say this too, and I think I said this the last time. We do not recommend candidates, we do not screen for you. We get you a good pool. We get you a good pool, and we get you good information about the candidates, and then it's the board's decision. So we're very respectful of that. But you guys have hired without doing a search from within, I think, the last 2 times.
And this may be jumping a little bit ahead to May 4th through the 10th, but when we talk about a superintendent's contract, I realize it is specific county to county.
Yes.
They may have some similarities, but at the end of the day, I believe that's going to be our responsibility. Do you?
Correct.
Yes, sir, ma'am. Thank you. Do you have like a recommendation or like maybe a general guideline of what an initial contract for an incoming superintendent would be? Or is that something you leave, or is that something you will not recommend that will be up
We
for
don't
us?
recommend, it's all negotiated. Your board attorney takes over at that point and negotiates the contract. What we do is provide sample contracts from around the state so that you can see what other districts have done, and we would provide those to the board and the attorney. And then you can see how other districts are negotiating their contract. It is, the salary's negotiated, but also the benefits are negotiated, and that's just part of the process.
And specifically, I was just inquiring about the time, the length of the contract, whether it be 2-year, 4-year.
Length of the contract. So it can be anywhere, it has to end on a June 30, and it can be up to 4 years, and that's the maximum. The question you need to consider as you're negotiating a contract is whether someone will come for a 1 or 2 year contract if they're going to move their family from out of district. And so those are the kinds of things that are negotiated. Some people don't want to move their whole family for a short term, and so that's just a negotiated item.
Thank you.
Just to tag along with Mr. Johnston's question, because I think it's a very good question, because it came up today, just me as well, is that, I thought in the training we went to that there were some that we went over that most of the contracts were 2 years in the very beginning. And
That's principals. That would be, principals by
well,
law are
okay,
2 year contracts
okay.
the first time. Our experience is that many are given 3 plus or 4 years, depending on when they come. It's rare to get something that's 2 or less. So 3 and 4 year contracts are the most common because someone's having to relocate, sell their house, remove their family, if they're coming from out of state. If it's someone local, and who's already living here, then you may not get pushback on that issue. But that's a lot to ask for someone, and so that's not really a recommendation. That's just the facts of,
Yeah.
someone.
Let me
moved,
comment on
you
that
know.
just a little bit, because I've negotiated several of my own, plus negotiated a number for other superintendents. It's pretty difficult if you're getting someone, especially from a certain out of state or any distance, and moving a family, that any of them are willing to come for less than a 4 year contract. Most would just say, if you don't want me longer, trust me enough to, normally they won't do it for 2.
Plus it
There are
takes
exceptions.
Plus, it takes a while for a superintendent to get the lay of the land, set his own vision, get those processes and procedures in place.
Yeah, it
to
takes
make
a
a
couple
difference.
years to start to show the impact of the changes that you might make. That's true. but again, that's all negotiated, and y'all can, deal with that at the time.
Let me, if I can make just a couple of quick comments for you again. I don't have any dog in this fight, except the fact I want someone eventually to let me go home. But what I would say to you is, you as a board, you are folks who the public have elected to make this decision, okay? You can't delegate it or shouldn't delegate it to someone else, and I think you've all decided you don't want to do that. The public process that she mentions is a good one. You get good feedback that way. People feel pretty good about that. But then it boils down to you and making that decision. I have worked with the School Board Association a number of occasions. When I was looking for a job, when I was doing an interim, they called me and said, can you come and do this interim while we do this? And worked with the boards while they were going through the process. They do an outstanding job. The way she describes it is the way they do it. You will be very satisfied with their work. So my suggestion to you is that let's get on with this and get the process started.
I'd also like to commend the board that, this isn't a local search, a North Carolina search. This is a nationwide search, and I think we're unanimous on we need to find the best leader for this school district, and a national search is the way to do it. Thank you.
I'm just curious as to where you would advertise the position.
Actually, and we, in order to get started, we have some documents that show you that. So we, as you know, every school board in the state is a member of our association. We send something out to all the superintendents and the HR directors, and we ask them to post it throughout the state. We work with the Superintendents Association. They have an aspiring superintendents program. And so all the superintendents in the state get our information directly. We also are part of a national affiliation of superintendent searchers. So we send that, we post it, and a lot of them have links or will post it for us. The one paid place we do recommend advertising is with the American Association of School Administrators. We believe that one source is going to get you pretty much everybody who's an administrator in the state and the country. We have a very good track record of attracting out-of-state candidates. I will say this, and the timing is good for this. I actually am going to the American Association of School Administrators meeting, which I have done every year for the last few years, to have a job fair day with them where other people who are recruiting for superintendencies, there's a special job fair for superintendents, and it's in February, in mid-February, so it's right in the middle of when you guys will be advertising, and I will be taking your advertisement with me and speaking to whomever comes there, but we also recommend you advertise generally, and then I will have an opportunity to speak with those folks and encourage them. Our job is to get you as many good candidates as possible. Your job is to, hopefully we'll get you more than one, but you only need one really, really good one. But hopefully, but to get you good candidates so you have good choices to make, and then to get you good information about those candidates and make sure they're well vetted. Because where the problems can come in is somebody has some things in their background that you need to know about before you make a decision, and that's our job, is to help you find those things and make sure you have references and thorough information about the candidates and what their big experience is, if they've been bought out somewhere or if they're superintendent of the year somewhere. That's the kind of information we will make sure you have, and we'll talk to the references for you.
Who does the advertisement? Do we produce that?
We'll take care of it. We actually, again, that we have materials for you. If you're ready to move forward, we have materials for you that includes a draft advertisement. We draft all the documents, so you don't have to start from scratch, but they're your documents, so you can change them however you want to. They're just, so you don't have to start from nowhere. We have some draft documents ready for you, so.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
I'll just make a comment. The fact that we rely on your organization to train us and every other board member across North Carolina speaks volumes for your group. We rely on you heavily for that, and your organization does a great job in training us. So seems like a no-brainer to put the search in your hands and help us to find the best candidate.
Well, we work for you. We're your association, so we are here to make you happy and help you, and this is probably the most important decision you make as a board, because it'll set the tone for the next, hopefully a lot of years, but at least the next 4 or so years.
I will point out that in our packet, there's two timelines, and the second timeline on the back does talk about a timeline starting, with our regularly scheduled meeting on January 14th. But what is the pleasure of the board?
We have additional packets, but we have one that could get you started tomorrow if you wanted to go ahead and make the decisions necessary.
So what is the pleasure of the board at this time?
I'd like to make a motion that this be placed as an action item on our agenda. We're having our regular session next Tuesday. That will give us just a few more days to get any questions answered that we may have after this session. But I would like to see this as an action item on next Tuesday's agenda.
I got a motion and a second. At this time, we'll open up for questions. Anybody have any questions about making the motion for next week for us to do an action item on this? Give us time to look at the documents. Any questions or comments?
I do have one question. Did you say you had the advertisements and information with you?
Information
Okay.
we were going to hand out to you
Perfect.
today for you to look at. And
Okay,
I'd
thank
like to, when we're done with this discussion, we can hand that information
That
out
would be great.
and talk a little bit about what's in there, so you need to think about.
And that's got some of the documents you were
Yes, sir.
referencing
Yes,
to.
sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. So at this time, we have a motion and a second. So all in favor of moving to an action item next week to make our superintendent search? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion carries 7-0. Michelle?
If it's okay, we have some documents for you to look at to be ready to move forward next week, if you do choose to use us. And they're in the packets that Jim Mowork, I forgot to introduce him again today, but he was here the other night. So I just want to go through really quickly what's in the packets. On the right-hand side, you'll see there's a memo that just talks about the documents that we will need to approve, and we would like to get this done next week so we can move forward presuming you choose us. So there are two timelines. One is starting tomorrow and one is starting on the 15th. It's perfectly fine, whatever you want to do. The next document, and by the way, so what we would need to do is approve the application deadline, which is the only thing that's set in stone. The rest are just kind of suggested dates, but you need to advertise the application deadline. So we're looking at March 9. On both of these, it's March 9. So that's what we recommend. That'll give you about 2 months of advertising. That's about the right amount of time. The next document is just a draft vacancy notice that we would use as your advertisement. We pulled the information, Jim has pulled the information from the website and from the Chamber of Commerce website, just information about your county and the school system. We want to make sure that's correct, so if you guys want to look through it. Again, since we haven't done a profile, the third paragraph there just has kind of the general things that a superintendent needs to do, kind of what you're looking for. So any changes to that would be welcome. The advertising, you asked about advertising. The next document has our standard advertising options. The only one that we recommend that is paid is on the front page is the American Association of School Administrators, and we do recommend the 60 days if you're going to advertise for that amount of time. And then the next one on the other side is additional options that not necessarily we recommend, but that are options available if you want to do more to basically appeal to certain populations. We believe our experience is that we pretty much get everybody with the administration, school administrators. The rest of it's free, which again is helpful. That's the one paid one we recommend. Back in the days when I was doing this when I was at Tharrington Smith, we would get a local advertisement that would cost about $700, and it would be very expensive, and you wouldn't be hitting a target audience. This hits the target audience, and we do send it to neighboring states, et cetera. The next document is the draft application. This is pretty much standard wherever you worked, whatever your address has been, where'd you go to school, but I will point your attention to pages 9 and 10. Which are short answers and essay questions. This is where you can tailor the application to what you're interested in looking for. So think about those 2 pages and what we would recommend. On the first page, you choose between 4 and 6 of those, and the second page you choose 3 or 4, or you can draft your own questions. Remember what the application is. It's a screening document that allows you to determine who you're interested in talking to. So think about that as you're looking at what questions you're interested in. What information do you want in order to be able to screen folks in or out? An application is a really good idea. This is an online application because then you can have the same information from everybody. You don't have, resumes don't necessarily have parallel information. So that's why we do recommend the application. And we recommend that you tailor it there for what these items or others that you're interested in seeing what experiences people have and what their goals are for you. The next documents are a series of documents of 2 different community surveys and staff surveys. So the way we recommend you do it is that you have a survey for the staff and for the community that are separate, but they're basically the same questions. But it allows you to distinguish between the staff concerns and the community concerns and compare and contrast them. And they tend to be different. Sometimes they're more aligned than others, but it's good to know what your staff concerns are and what their priorities are as separate from the community. And so we have 2 sets here. The first one in yellow are very simple, what's most important, what's least important. Very simple questions. You'll probably get more responses to these. The second set is a more nuanced survey that asks people to spend time distinguishing between items such as, please select the 5 most important areas or skills that the next superintendent should possess. And you'll have to rate them from 1 to 5, your top skills. So they require a lot more time to think through those, but you get a lot more nuanced and detailed information. We have both of these because some boards prefer one and some boards prefer the other, so we offer that to you as options. You can also tailor any of these documents or change them. If there are other questions you want to ask on the surveys, we can certainly add those. These are just a starting place. They're not they're not what you have to use. We're happy to change those to reflect what your needs are. So those are the documents we would need to get approved to get you started advertising and to get the application up. And if you're going to use us if you're going to approve us next week, then we would need to get your feedback on those and get you to give us your choices on the application and other things like that.
So do you help us develop a rubric if we go with a more open-ended? Is that something that you all help us do? Or
Yes, we will take what you do. So what we recommend is after you get the survey information, if you want to have community forums, we can facilitate those as well. And then we will come back to the board after and present you with all of the information from your community, and you all will talk to us about what you're interested in individually, what you're interested in seeing in a superintendent, and it's usually informed and closely aligned with what your input has been. And we will take that information back and we'll develop a rating chart for you, and also we'll work on questions that are based on those priorities so that we'll have, that's how we suggest using that. It's not a binding document, it's an aspirational document, I guess is the right way to talk about it. So, but yes, we'll work with you. And it's not binding that you have to use it as a rubric. I think it's just kind of a reminder of what your priorities are and allows you to talk to each other about, well, we said we wanted this, and this is, this person shows evidence of this in this way, and it allows you as a good conversation piece, okay?
Is it, do you all think that we can take some time in our spare time this week and look at this and kind of come up with what we want out of which survey is more relevant to us, as well as the questions that we feel are best suited for our school system as far as that, where it says choose 4 to 6 on one page and 3 to 4. If we have more, that's great.
Just remember, these people, you don't want to overwhelm them with, a week's worth of work, so you just got to be reasonable about what you expect of your candidates.
Right.
You're hoping for busy people who are good superintendents who are busy doing their job, so you don't want to impose on them too much.
How in depth with the North Carolina superintendents does this need to go? I mean, someone coming from out of state may not be familiar with the
That's
standards for
correct.
superintendents.
I think you don't necessarily need to be wedded to that. Those are very specific, what you're judged on, but I think the general categories make sense. I mean, so if you want to look at that as a way to inform your comments or make choices about the application, I think that's fine. I just don't think it's a, you know, and not everybody even uses that instrument to evaluate their superintendents, because it's not mandatory. So it's what you want to do and what you think is important. That makes sense.
Dr. Smith, are you referring to the 7 standards that, I think that's, I don't want to say uniform, but it's transitive in some states where you look at external development, leadership, and micropolitical, and those 7 standards, so yeah.
So again, I think the general categories, you know, make sense. If that makes sense. Okay. Any other questions?
I'm just curious about the surveys. I know that there's 2 different types. In your experience, has one given you more feedback than the other, more detailed feedback, or is it kind of both?
I would say that the yellow ones that are simpler, you get more people responding. The nuanced one takes more time and it's a very thoughtful survey. You get more nuanced information. So it's what you want. But I would also remind you that both of these surveys, all of these surveys, have an open-ended place where people can write in their comments and say whatever they think is relevant and what they want to say. So, I mean, then those can be things from please hire so-and-so to don't hire so-and-so, which, as you said, we would redact those things out, to comments about the board, comments about, we had one comment one time was somebody was really mad about the year-round school system, the school in their system, and thought they were getting favoritism, and it had nothing to do with the search, but people put down there what they want the board to hear. So it's helpful for people to be able to say what they feel like they want to say to the board. So that's the open-ended piece. And then another decision you'll need to make next week is whether you want to do community forums, and how many. I would say to you about that our experience is you don't want to do too many community forums because we just don't get a ton of attendance at our community forums, because we have the online survey option, and in the middle of January and February, when it's cold outside, people tend to do those things at home, fill out those things at home, and they're anonymous. They're not confidential in the sense that all the comments will be made public except the personnel comments, but they are anonymous. So a lot of people feel more comfortable making anonymous comments. But we would suggest, maybe 2 or 3 at the most community surveys or community forums if you're interested in doing that. And we do sort of a kitchen table format where people come together and talk and answer specific questions about what they're interested in seeing in a superintendent. So.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. Wooten, second by Mr. Johnston. All of those in favor say aye. Aye.
And I
All those
presume you would
opposed?
like us to come back
Yes.
next week?
Yes.
We'll put this on the agenda.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that'd be great. We'll be back, and you have all the documents. If we want to move forward at that time, we'll be here ready to do that with you. It's all signed by Ed and everything. I'll just give you what we got. If they decide, it's really simple. Okay. Those are the same thing. Did Tony? I can't remember. I think we did now. It's been a while. It's been so long.